Hey, nobody's out there, right? Good. um. Anyway, I'm gonna say weird personal stuff. If you don't want to hear that, just don't watch my channel. Anyway, I was gonna turn on some lights, but I'm leaving it all dark and depraved for effect, because I figure. Anyway, get the point. Well, the party's over. The party might be over. Like, it's 6 in the morning. It's still dark out. My dad is kind of freaking out because he feels like his life is kind of falling apart, and so basically it's been paradise. It's been paradise to just live in. My dad has paid all my bills. I had my little fun room. He did everything. And there was this kind of the last like 7 years I was just wondering, like, why does anybody work? Like, why doesn't everybody just do exercise and do games all day and just do art all day? Well, they were scared of, like, oh my god, like, how am I gonna survive? And I've been pleasantly sheltered from that my whole life. But really, like, it's really wonderful. It's really wonderful if you could have all your expenses paid for. It's wonderful to not have, like, if I have to get a job again, I'm always just going to think of everything that I do about, like, just trying to keep my head above water and just being like, God, I hope one day I can eventually get back to that point where I just didn't have to work. Just not having to work and just having the freedom to just do what you want. To just be able to ask, like, what do I really want to do? Not like, what do I have to do? Just, what do I want to do with the only time in my life? That seems like ground zero. But what am I trying to say? Like, maybe it's good. Maybe, like, if I have to get a job, I keep thinking, like, maybe it'll be good because maybe, like, back when humans used to forage for survival, it's nice to, like, have to do something. It's nice to have some, like, fire under your butt and you're like, oh, I gotta, like, talk to people because it's for my job. And then maybe that can, like, make me do stuff and learn how to, like, just dealing with my dad now, it forces me to, like, have to socialize. So I haven't, like, made eye contact for, like, 7 years or something because I haven't had to make eye contact. But now I keep thinking, like, well, rather than doing these forcing myself to look at people and practice active listening skills, maybe just life, if I get pushed out of here and I have to, like, get a job and stuff, maybe life will force me to do a bunch of stuff where I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, it'll put some life into me. Like, I'll have to get up, I'll have to, like, do some social stuff, and maybe that's good because maybe I don't know, like, I would like to just overcome fear of humans. But if I ever do have to do that, I think from this point on I'm going to be really cynical about just the nature of male-female relationships. I'll just always think, like, oh, like nobody's listening, right? I'm going to shut up a second. But really, like, I was just basically like a kid who was sheltered until he was 45. Like, that's kind of how life feels, is like, I was a kid, I went to college, I stayed in college for 10 years, and then I just kind of hid at my dad's house. So I don't really understand the way life works. But, like, but what, Sean? Just, I wish I could just ask the world. I don't want to sound like a misogynist, but I wish I could just ask the world, like, is that kind of how things are? Like, do men basically pay for sex in one way or another? Like, I think that's kind of, like, I could safely say that is basically that. Just, I don't understand the mind of women, but, like, it just seems like when I was in my 20s, a few people had, like, flings with me, but they kind of wanted, like, a husband, I guess. They were like, they wanted, like, I guess my mom said that. Like, my mom said women use sex to try to have a friend. Men use friendship to try to have sex. What's the point? I always kind of wonder, like, at some existential level, what's the point of life? And I feel like, well, I always crave pussy. I'm always like, God, I wish I could get, I feel like a lot of things are fueled by, like, I wish I could get my dick into some pussy that, I wish I could, like, fuck somebody I was really attracted to. But, like, I wonder if that's it. It's, like, not that's it, but, like, I don't know, I'm just tripping out. I just woke up. I should go back to sleep. But, like, I always remind myself that humans share 50% of their DNA with fruits and flowers, and the game probably hasn't really changed all that much. That's kind of cynical, but like it really they bloom. When they bloom, some of them get picked and they spread their seed, and some of them don't get picked and they don't spread their seed, and then they anyway, I don't want to get old depressing, but I wonder, like, is that it? Is that it? Basically, women are like, well, I'll let someone impregnate me, but you gotta pay for it. And so I wonder if that's it. I wonder if that's just like, if I was gonna redo life, I would just tell some kid, just get a good job and get somebody that you can stand to have sex with for a long period of time, and just try to keep the job and try to I don't like the idea of just getting used. I hate that. If I keep like, maybe no, I'm gonna shut up a second. I'm gonna go back to sleep. But like, I think I just had like a bad model growing up. Maybe I don't know. Like, I'm very sheltered, and my exposure to like how other people's lives go is very limited to really just my parents and my ex-girlfriend's parents. Those are the only older people whose lives I saw from the inside. But at least in the case of my mom, if I ask my mom, like, I say, didn't you just find some defeated middle-aged man and commandeer him because he was lonely and he wanted sex? And so she's like, yeah. And I'm just like, well, that's horrible. Like, you don't want to get dominated. You don't want to get, like, somebody to be like, I own you. You have to do what I say. That seems, like, really horrible. And so I wonder, like, this is my general thinking. This is the way I would think it really is. I think when people are young and attractive, which basically is, like, late teens to early 30s, some sex just happens. Like, when I was young and attractive, some other young and attractive people bumped into me a few times, and they're like, hey, I'm attracted to you, you're attracted to me, let's have sex. But then I guess there's this period after that where people are just not really attractive anymore, and so then it's kind of like, I guess you're supposed to have found somebody that you had kids with, and then you make a deal that you're going to stay together forever. Basically, long story short, I'm just never going to pay for somebody to live with me. And so what, Sean? So basically, if I have to manage life on my own, I think I'm just gonna try to learn about like different aspects of life that I don't know. I think, like, no matter what, I don't know. I'm just gonna go back to sleep. But like, life might severely change if my dad suddenly is like incapacitated. Worst case scenario, he might just kick me out of here. I might have to go fend for myself. In which case, what I'd like to do before I die is, if I could, I'd just like to like learn how to overcome my fear of humans. Forget trying to get laid. I think just the ability to have like that kind of life with like a wife and kids is kind of over. And also, just if I ever, I think I'm kind of gonna always be cynical now, because if I ever am with a woman again, I think I'm always just gonna be like, she doesn't like you, she just likes money. And I'm never gonna I'm never gonna understand how men do that. I'm never gonna be able to do that. Like, I'm gonna shut up a second, but I'm never gonna be able to do that American Gothic thing. I just want to ask the world, basically, like, American Gothic. I want to ask the world, like, is that most marriages? Are most marriages basically some version of this? Like, older marriages, like, these guys are like older people. If I look around the neighborhood, sometimes I'll see some older people who are my age or older, and they're together in some house, and I'm wondering, like, well, if they're not attracted to each other, what's the glue that sort of keeps them together? Is it basically some guy paying for the company of some other person? And I'm like, I'll never do that. I'm just think like, well, if people aren't like attracted to each other naturally, that seems like you just have a whore. You have a whore, or it's just. This is my fear. My fear is that my dad basically just got used for his loneliness by some bullying woman, kind of my mom. And then, I don't want to sound cynical, but even when I ask my mom, she says, yeah, that's how it is. And then my ex-girlfriend, her parents were like that too. There was this situation where this old lonely, ugly, middle-aged guy had some woman living in his house, and she's like, oh, like, my hero, you're my husband and stuff. But then suddenly, if he's like, I don't want to pay for your like trip to Hawaii, she's like, well, fine, I'm out of here, I can have another you in a minute. And then he's like, no, like, come back. And so that seems like checkmate. That seems like you should never like pay to get rid of your loneliness. You should just live stream and make YouTube videos all day long. Really, that's what I'm gonna do. If I have to fend, I'm trying to think, like, if my dad falls apart, worst case scenario, he kicks me out. I have to go to Alabama or some like really cheap place to live. I get some garbage man job or God knows what. Let's see, janitor job. I don't know, whatever. I think I'm just gonna live stream and make videos and get rid of my loneliness that way. But I'll never understand that. I'll never totally get. I wish I could just ask the world, like, what the fuck? Like, what's the fucking? Actually, I'm gonna do that. Nobody's listening, right? But I'm gonna do like I'm gonna go to jiu-jitsu today. If I do nothing else, I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna go to jiu-jitsu, and then after jiu-jitsu, I'm going to do some interview. I'm going to interview this guy. I'm going to do like a mock podcast, and I'm just going to ask a bunch of like low life questions. And one of them, a few basic questions I have, I don't want to be a misogynist, but a few basic questions I have is like, is that kind of the deal? Is the deal basically like, are most marriages some sort of exchange of effort, doing time and errands in exchange for sex and not having loneliness? Is that like most adult marriages? And then like, will that go away? Like when they have like universal basic income, if they ever have that, is that going to go away? Or like, do I just not really click with women? That could be a thing too. I really wonder. I've never been in the mind of like another man, and I don't want to sound like a misogynist, but there does seem to be something where like if I'm really on, like I wish I could ask men like, why are you doing that man thing? Like, are you forcing it? Nobody's listening, right? I'm gonna shut up a second. I have nothing to say. No one should listen to this. I'm not gay, but really, if I'm really honest, I've listened. The last 10 years has given me a window into listening to like how a lot of other humans think, and I have to admit that after listening to like probably like 1,000 Joe Rogans, there's probably one woman interview in all of those where I'm like, oh, I like this interview. Like I'm really. That was a really interesting interview. And so what the hell's wrong with me? Like are women are from Venus and men are from Mars? Is that kind of it? Like women are just really different people? Or am I basically like a gay guy who just am I emotionally into men, meaning that I find men interesting, they like make sense to me, but I'm not physically, like I've never jerked off to a man, but maybe there's something wrong with me where I just don't click with women. I'm like, does that make sense? Nobody's listening, right? But that's my weird theory, is that like, if people were just souls, if they were just souls, right? If they just were in some genderless world in like The Sims or something like that. Let's say you went into some virtual world and you couldn't see anybody's gender. Everybody was genderless. It seems like I'd probably want to spend my life with a man. Or I just not even spend life. Just who would I click with? Who would I want to like talk with? Probably men. Like probably men are like we have more in common. Like we have shared interests. We make sense to each other. We're like, oh, you're similar to me. So I just think like if it's dealing with a person in terms of their personality, it's like, oh, I would definitely, men just make more sense to me. I would imagine like women probably make more sense to women. And so I just feel like I want to ask the world, are most marriages basically like an exchange of effort and time for sex? And if that's the case, I'm never going to like want to do that. That's just like, oh God. Actually, I'm going to shut up a second. I really don't want to sound like a misogynist, and I don't want to turn some young, impressionable person into a misogynistic type person. Let's just say there's probably something wrong with me. I'm fine with that. I'm fine. Like, let's just say it's probably me. Hopefully it's just me. But this is kind of another perspective I have, is that like when I was a kid, when I had friends over, when we played video games or we played with G.I. Joes or we did like imaginary games and stuff, it was all just guys. Like it was all just like boys. We were like boys, boys will be boys. We rode bicycles, we jumped off ramps, we built tree houses and stuff. And then there was this time when we hit puberty where it was like, oh, girls. But it was really just like all of a sudden girls, I got like a boner and I was like horny all the time. And so I've never gotten old before. Like this being in my 40s is like this new, like I'm now an old guy. Time goes by and now it's like, oh, now I'm like old and everybody my age is old. And so it's like, oh, like maybe there was just horniness. There was this window of time full of horniness. And now that window of time is kind of over. And now I'm like, well, I guess I didn't get picked. I didn't get to spread my seed. That's fine. They say like, if I ask ChatGPT, it says like 50% of men 50% of old people don't have kids. It's perfectly normal. And then some people have like 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids. And I'm like, well, I probably couldn't do all that work anyway. And so, fucking, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, I'm going to shut up a second. Sometimes I wonder if life just kind of shapes out in terms of like, who can do this stuff. Like there's a bunch of, anyway, I should just go to sleep. Yeah, fuck it. I'm just going to go to sleep. Don't you want to say anything else? No, this sounds like all like low life stuff. Anyway, the upshot of what I'm trying to say is that my dad is like basically falling apart. And so, I mean, he said he just woke up, but he said he's like falling apart. I might have to sink or swim, and hopefully I can swim a little. Maybe if I just try really hard, I can just stay afloat until 80. And if I could, during that time, if I could learn to like overcome my fear of humans, before I die, if I could just make any progress in just overcoming fear of humans, forget sex, forget like even, I don't even care about sex anymore. I don't even, well, it's not my main priority anymore. It just seems like before I die, if I could just overcome my fear of humans, maybe getting some like dead end job could be good. Just to practice. It's like I want to pay people to like interact with me. Why not? If I just had some job that would enable me to talk, maybe it'd be cool to like actually be able to learn to enjoy human interaction by being forced to do it. Anyway, nobody's listening, right? But I tried this before. I tried working at Home Depot, and I was like, I'm gonna learn to socialize, but like it never really worked. Anyway, hope you have a good day. Sorry for watching this. If somebody's watching this, I'm sorry for wasting your time. If you want to, I want to give you something good. There's this website called Jog FM, and if you want to develop a cardio habit, I found this to be like a good trick. Jog FM, 88 beats per minute running songs. If you go into Jog FM, you can find this list of like popular running songs, and then if you just find a few songs that are 88 beats per minute or more, 88 beats per minute is like a good running pace. If you basically just force yourself to like step to the beat. If you have like 2 songs, like Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift is a good pace for a running song, and then Christina Aguilera Fighter is like a sprinting pace. So like 93, 94 beats per minute is like a really fast run. 88 beats per minute is like a good steady pace that you could do slightly uphill. It's great. It kind of does the work for you. It's kind of, if you're lazy, you can get the beat to like do the running for you. Anyway, that's it. I'm going back to sleep. Have a good day. Have a good